Open your eyes and let's begin. I'm going to talk to you about the mind's influence on us. I'm going to talk to you about my experience, tell you a little bit about what goes on in my mind. Not too much detail, you don't need to know that, but give you an impression of the mischievous nature, like a naughty little 4-year-old kid, telling me things I don't want to hear, telling me things that aren't true, distracting me from things I want to focus on, that kind of thing. And we'll also talk about what you can do about that. If you look at the mind as a tool, and you imagine that, well, your hands are tools as well, and many hundreds of thousands of years in our own history, when man started to make tools, they'd only just got to grips with these tools that they have at the ends of their arms. They'd only just learned to play with the tools, play with the raw materials. And when we look at where we are now, they seem very simple. And I'm sure that in 500 years, 10,000 years time, people look back at us and go, if only they knew what we knew. And only now we started to learn how powerful the mind is. They're not just the conscious mind, but the subconscious mind or the unconscious mind. There's so much that we can give over to our unconscious mind. I remember hearing a story when I was younger of a man who could perform great mathematical calculations without any calculator or pen or paper. But he would just hear the problem and then forget about it and go about his day. And sometimes it would take 3 days, but the answer would pop into his head. And there it was. And I remember thinking the first time I heard that, I thought, hold on a minute. I can give stuff over to my unconscious mind and go about my business, and it will then give me the answer. Whatever your mind is telling you that you don't like, flip it and tell yourself the opposite, and keep telling yourself the opposite, because it's going to take some time to get there. This is not something that can be done overnight, especially if you've been doing it for years. I was thinking about this the other day. I'm a perfectionist, for example, and it can drive me crazy, let alone the people around me sometimes if I'm using it inappropriately. But where does it come from? Was I born a perfectionist? That's unlikely. It's possible, I suppose, but let's assume for the time being that it isn't. And I've picked it up from certain family members, and I can definitely point to 2 or 3 and say, okay, yeah, there's a perfectionist influence there. And if again we draw on what we talked about last week and say, if I think I will get the attention that I'm looking for by behaving in a certain way, i.e. like a perfect little kid, little boy, do my duty, then that kind of behaviour will be reinforced when I get the attention I'm looking for. I remember my gran, for example, I'd come home from school at the age of 10 or whatever and say, oh, I got 8 out of 10 for a particular test. And she would say, what about the other 2? And if I were to ask her now, she'd say, well, I was only joking. But to a 10-year-old mind, you're thinking, possibly, this is one route you can go down, which is what I probably did with myself. My brother probably thought, who cares about the other 2 grand? I got 8, so take it or leave it. Whereas I thought to myself, yeah, I can do better. I'm not good enough. 8 out of 10 is not good enough. And if you hear that a few times, and if you consider that that's probably been going on before the age of 10 in some way or another, then you realise what it is you've got to overturn when you come to the point in your life that you want to change those messages that you're giving to yourself. Whenever there was chaos in my trainer would say, relax, let's have a cup of tea.